They say she died of heartbreak. A noble girl in Edo who spotted a samurai in the distance. She never learned his name. She never really even saw him again. Day after day, she prayed, she obsessed. She had this long-sleeved kimono, a Furisode, commissioned in his colors, embroidered with the same family crest of this samurai. She wore it constantly. She slept with it, she spoke to it, and when her soul could take it no more, she passed away, clutching the sleeve of this kimono. The temple, unaware of the girl's grief, accepted the garment and passed it on to another young woman, and then another. Each time the wearer died, suddenly, quietly, and always at night. Finally, the priests decided to burn this long-sleeved kimono. But as the fire consumed the silk, whispers of the prayer of the desperate sprung out from it. The fire from this kimono, it spread. It was wild. It was unstoppable. An entire district of Edo was consumed and reduced to ash. Locals still call it the Furisode fire. Was it a cursed cloth? A haunted kimono? Something angry? Welcome to the Makery after midnight. My name is Joy, and tonight we're going to be talking about the Tsukumogami from Japanese folklore. Before I get into the podcast, I just wanted to take a moment to make a disclaimer. I am not of Japanese descent. I try my best to research and present everything in a respectful manner, but there are still chances that I might get something wrong. And if there's anything that I do get wrong, or you would like to add to the story, please comment below. I always want to learn more about the topics that I'm talking about. I want to have an open mind. Today for this podcast, I'm actually going to try a different style. Last time when I did my first episode, I was trying to crochet and talk at the same time, and I found it really difficult to actually do that. I didn't get that much done on my project, and I would like to get a little bit more done, so I'm going to switch to more of a voiceover mode. I really aspire to be the lo-fi girl, like cozy, that you guys do your work with. So I'm going to switch over the view to the far end of my studio so that you can kind of see a good overview of what it looks like in here, and you can work with me and work on your projects with me. I'm curious as to which type of video you would prefer, if you prefer me talking like this to you guys, or if you prefer kind of like the cozy atmosphere view, bird's eye view of my studio. So let me know in the comments which one you prefer. I'm gonna switch into voiceover mode right now. I have a nice hot drink here. I'm gonna try to get some market prep done, so grab your project, grab your beverage of choice, and let's learn about the Tsukumogami, or the yokai in Japanese culture. So what are yokai? In the simplest terms, yokai are supernatural beings from Japanese folklore. But truthfully, that definition does not really do the absolute breadth and depth of these entities justice. They're not quite ghosts, they're not quite gods, and if you're an anime fan like me, Inuyasha, yokai were considered demons, but that definition is not quite right either. These beings live somewhere in between, in the weird, misty space where folklore, fear, and imagination meet. The word yokai is made of two characters, yo, meaning bewitching or strange, and kai, meaning mystery or apparition. So together, quite literally, yokai are strange apparitions. Mysterious phenomena. They've been part of Japanese storytelling for over 1,000 years. Stories whispered in mountain villages, scratched into old scrolls, and splashed across Edo-era woodblock prints. Yokai come in many forms. Some are animal-like, like the well-known kitsune. You might recognize this from Naruto if you're an anime fan. The kitsune is a fox spirit known for its trickery and shape-shifting. Other yokai are more humanoid, like the one. They're big, horned ogres with clubs and bad tempers. Some are anthropomorphic natural phenomena, like the Yamauba, a mountain witch said to eat travelers, or the Kawa no Kami, which is a river spirit that pulled careless people into the eddies. Then there were the yurei, which are more like the Western ghosts that we know, spirits of the dead who haven't quite found peace. I can honestly go forever about the thousands of different yokai that exist, but I want to focus in on one particular type that caught my interest and my attention as somebody who stays at home a lot: the Tsukumogami. The Tsukumogami are everyday objects. Yep, things that come to life. And according to folklore, when an item reaches its 100th birthday, it can awaken, especially if it's neglected or is in spaces that are super emotionally charged. There are Tsukumogami that are brooms, there are Tsukumogami that are kettles, paper lanterns, and later I'm going to talk about some of the ones that I thought were interesting. But basically, if the item is old and it's been used and forgotten, it might be a Tsukumogami and it might be watching you. In some stories, the transformation happens naturally, 100 years and poof, it gains soul. In other tales, the change is sparked by a strong emotion, neglect, abuse, devotion, grief, like the Furisode we heard about earlier, something worn previously so lovingly, maybe a little bit obsessively. It absorbed the wearer's spirit and then it became something else in the afterlife. Some Tsukumogami are harmless, they're just pranksters. Some of them just want recognition or attention to not be thrown out in the trash, but some of them, they're angry. They've been tossed aside, they've been burned, replaced, and they're not over it. The idea of Tsukumogami grew out of Shinto beliefs, which teach that everything, every object, rock, and tree, can have a spirit. Over time, this merged with Buddhist morality, especially during the Heian and Muromachi periods, when wastefulness was really frowned upon. If you discarded something carelessly, maybe it would come back and teach you a lesson. By the Edo period, artists like Toriyama Sekien started cataloging yokai in pictures, and bringing these objects to life with ink and imagination. That's where many of today's classic Tsukumogami got their iconic looks. So, next time you're at the craft store looking to buy another ball of yarn, only to stuff them into the very back of your hobby closet, not speaking from experience by the way, maybe think again, or say thank you to your existing stash, just in case. In my research, I chose 6 yokai that I found amusing or interesting. I tried to stick with the textile theme as someone who works with cloth, fiber, and yarns a lot, so let's get into them. The first one I want to talk about is the Furisode, or haunted kimono. In Japan, kimonos are extremely symbolic. They're basically wearable heirlooms and are linked very closely to the wearer's past and identity. These days, kimonos are super rare. You might see them at weddings or tea ceremonies or coming-of-age celebrations, but they're mostly worn for special events and formal events. They're worn with a lot of care, they're folded super carefully, and then they're put back into storage. They are works of art, in my opinion, and really it's a shame, but also I totally understand why, that they are no longer daily wear. But in the past, they were everywhere. During the Edo period and earlier, they were the garment to wear, top of the line, high fashion. They were worn daily by people of all classes. They were layered for warmth in the winter, they were sewn, repaired, passed down. They absorbed not just body heat, but emotions, habits, lives. In traditional Japan, the kimono identified who you were. Every element carried meaning. The sleeve length, fabric type, pattern, even how it was tied. A long-sleeved furisode, for example, like the story I told you at the beginning of this craft-along, meant youth, innocence, wealth, and potential. A short-sleeved kimono, or a kosode, implied maturity, domesticity, and sometimes burden. Kimonos marked life stages. They were wrapped around joy, grief, labor, and longing, and because of the emotional weight, it was believed they could absorb ki, the spiritual energy of the person who wore them. So to throw one away without any kind of ceremony, it wasn't just rude, it was potentially dangerous. There were many yokai and folktales related to or linked to haunted kimonos, including the story at the beginning of this craft along. Another one I came across was called the Kosode no Te, which thoroughly creeped me out. It doesn't shriek, it doesn't chase you down or anything like that. It doesn't even have a face. Kosode no Te translates to the hand of the small-sleeved kimono, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's an apparition of a disembodied hand that slips out from the sleeve of a kosode. Unlike the long, dramatic sleeves of the furisode, a kosode was functional. It was a practical kimono that was worn every day. It was mainly worn by mothers, merchants, servants, women whose lives were often filled with routine and labor. In illustrated yokai encyclopedias across the Edo period, the Kosode no Te often showed up as like a limp, lifeless kimono that was abandoned, was folded or hung up, and a pale human hand dropping out from one of its sleeves. Just a hand. No body, no face, no movement. Well, until it reaches for you. In some texts, the hand slowly starts to twitch or curl. It might try to pray, and then it might try to grab. Ugh, so creepy. But just as a reminder, the Kosode wasn't a luxury item. It was a working woman's uniform. So if this yokai is animated by grief or loneliness, I think that's kind of tragic actually. It's a bit symbolic of a life lived in the background, one that kind of lingers, unnoticed, through a hand that won't stop reaching. This yokai has been interpreted in texts in a few ways. I found stories saying that maybe a fragment of a soul resides in the garment and has never really moved on. Some stories say it's the spirit of the kimono itself, angry at being discarded or resentful for being forgotten. The hand might be a manifestation of its longing to belong again. Maybe it could be seen as a warning about how easily we overlook the hands that served us, about the unseen labor of women, caregivers, of those whose work is only noticed after they're gone. It's eerie, but it's also a little bit sad. So let's lighten the mood a little bit. I found another interesting and relatively harmless yokai, the Bakezori, or the Wandering Sandal. You might hear it at night. Kararin, kororin, kan kororin. Maybe a strange shuffling across the floorboards, wooden, rhythmic, almost playful. You check the hallway, and there's nothing. Just your old sandals by the door. But wait, one of them has moved, and that's when you realized they've turned into Bakezori. The Bakezori is one of the most iconic, and for me, oddly endearing Tsukumogami. It's a wandering straw sandal, usually drawn with 2 arms, 2 legs, and 1 giant eyeball, and a big gaping mouth. And in all of the things that I've read, it's always angry. But not because it's evil or anything like that, but it's because you left it behind. The Zori was once the go-to everyday footwear in Japan. It was a straw or cloth sandal that people wore constantly, especially indoors. But they were made in pairs, just like all other shoes, and according to folklore, if one sandal gets worn out or discarded while the other one is forgotten, that neglected Zori might come back to complain, and usually not quietly. Kararin, kororin, kan kororin, managu mitsu ni hanin mai. The famous Zori chant. The stories say this is what you'll hear if you have a Bakezori yokai in your house. The chant, from what I saw, doesn't have like an official English translation, but from what I read, it's supposed to sound like the rhythmic tapping and sliding of sandals on a wooden floor. And the last line, managu mitsu ni hanin mai, is thought to be like a weird little protest and translates to I've got 3 eyes and 2 teeth, or possibly in other renditions, 3 eyes but only 2 bodies. Interpretations vary, but I think the gist is I don't have a match, I've been left out, and I'm upset about it. So luckily in most stories, the Bakezori doesn't actually hurt people. It's more of a trickster. It might slap across your tatami floor in the middle of the night, or scream its chant from behind sliding doors, or just show up in the middle of the room damp and dirty like it walked in on its own. But it's relatively harmless. The Bakezori appeared in many Edo period yokai scrolls, most famously in the Hyaki Surezure Bukuro by Toriyama Sekien, where it's drawn as a leaping, one-eyed sandal mid-scream. In modern culture, it shows up a lot in children's books, in anime, and video games. It's sometimes cute, depicted as a cute little character, sometimes it's creepy, and in my opinion, it's always slightly ridiculous. Another silly yokai, and one that's really well known as well, is the Karakasa Obake. So picture this. It's late, rain taps on the roof, you're getting ready for bed, and you glance toward the entryway where your umbrella is propped up, dripping gently onto the floor. But was it always open like that? Was it always that color? And is that an eye? The Karakasa is a traditional Japanese oil paper umbrella. It's made of bamboo, washi paper, and sometimes silk thread embroidery. It's a work of art as well, a craft person's work of art. It's not like the plastic things that we stuff in our tote bags these days. And like many other well-loved items in older Japan, a karakasa would be repaired, maintained, passed on. It was another heirloom item. And if you ever did discard it carelessly, like the other Tsukumogami that we've talked about, it can come back with a grudge. The Karakasa Obake yokai, also called the Kasa Obake, is one of Japan's most iconic yokai. Even if you don't know the name, maybe you've seen an image floating around somewhere, an old-fashioned paper umbrella with one huge eyeball, a long tongue lolling out of its mouth, and for some reason, a single human leg. Sometimes it hops, sometimes it floats, sometimes it just stands there, watching. Unlike more dangerous yokai, the Karakasa Obake is usually more a mischief maker, not really a monster. It appears suddenly, often indoors, hopping on one leg, sticking out its tongue, or startling people with loud laughs or sneezes. In some stories I even read that sometimes it licks people with its long tongue, which is particularly disgusting to me. Some versions say it watches people from the shadows. Others claim it tries to trip you, especially if you disrespect your belongings or hoard too much. In more regional tales, it appears during storms, not to shield you from the rain, but to follow you quietly, tongue flapping, one foot slapping the ground behind you like it's mocking you. There's a kind of loneliness to this yokai. It doesn't really want to destroy or damage or hurt anything. It really just wants attention. It just wants to be noticed by you. And just like the Bakezori, it's quite harmless. The Karakasa Obake really took off in the Edo period as well, in those same yokai scrolls by Toriyama Sekien that the Bakezori did. And it was cataloged in there as part of Japan's strange and supernatural menagerie. Its exaggerated design, the huge eye and the bouncing leg, made it really great for storytelling and satire. Today it's become kind of like a yokai mascot, and just like the Bakezori, you'll see it in anime, in manga. Some kids have it as a Halloween costume, it's in children's books, it's in movies. There are a couple other related umbrella yokai in Japanese folklore I came across as well, but they're not exactly the same as the Kasa Obake, and they're a little bit more dangerous. There's the Hone Karakasa, or skeletal umbrella, that is said to appear when bad weather is about to strike. There's the rain umbrella in the Higashiwa region that paralyzes your feet if you see it. And then there is the ghost umbrella in the now Hoki Saihaku district. And what it does is basically take the wind and suddenly you're airborne. But while these spirits haunt you on rainy nights, the next one waits until you're back home, where you're safe, cozy, wrapped in a blanket. Except your blanket is the one that's alive. The next yokai I want to talk about is the Boroboroton, a tattered futon or mattress that gets up in the middle of the night and tries to kill you. Yes, you heard that right. The Boroboroton, whose name literally means tattered futon, first appears in its most recognizable form during, guess what, the Edo period, in the same yokai scrolls mentioned before. In some regional folktales, the Boroboroton is more ghost than yokai. Instead of a possessed object, it's said to be haunted by a soul that died in their sleep, especially someone who died alone or unnoticed. In those tellings, the futon becomes cursed, and anyone who sleeps on it afterward may never wake up. Sekien's depiction of the Boroboroton is simple, almost comical at first glance. It's a heavily worn sleeping mat or futon with fraying edges and animated limbs. It has wide gaping eyes stitched into the cloth, a gnarled mouth mid-scream, and usually it appears to be lunging or mid-leap. In early folklore, the Boroboroton waits until nightfall to exact its revenge on you, and this is when the house is quiet, when you're the most vulnerable, and then it rises, softly, silently. It slithers across the tatami. It might wrap around your neck, smother you, strangle you, or even simply just hover menacingly above, like it's remembering the shape of the person who used to lie beneath it. In some stories, it shakes itself violently, flinging dust and mold everywhere, not out of spite or anything, but of sadness. In others, it drapes over its owner's body as they sleep and suffocates them slowly by squeezing, like an unloving embrace. In some versions of the story, the Boroboroton murmurs things the owner had said while lying in it. Secrets, regrets, names, and in many tellings, the futon doesn't even act alone. Once one item comes alive in your house, it can inspire others to rise. Tatami mats, robes, lamps, kind of like a weird, ghostly household uprising of some sort. This yokai is known to be evil and dangerous for humans, but I also read some stories where Boroborotons are not exactly destructive, but are more known to throw some wild parties. The futons will sneak out at night searching for other Tsukumogami and create chaos, noise, and negatively impact the sleep of nearby humans. In these stories, the Boroboroton is less of a killer and more of a lonely ghost throwing a tantrum. Over time, and like the other yokai I mentioned earlier, the Boroboroton has been softened. It's now more portrayed as a silly, grumpy, or misunderstood futon. A haunted futon that just wants to be used again. The last yokai that was textile related was the Ittan Momen, or translated, the one bolt of cotton yokai, and I think this one is the most dangerous out of all of them. The Ittan Momen is native to the Kagoshima prefecture in southern Japan, and its earliest stories come from farmers, travelers, villagers, and other rural folk who spoke of being attacked by something that wasn't quite solid, but wasn't wind either. In its most famous form, the Ittan Momen flies through the air at night, silently, swiftly, hunting, and when it finds a target, it wraps around that person's face and suffocates them to death. It's smooth, it's efficient, and it does all this with no claws or no teeth, just cloth. 33 feet of it, to be exact. Interestingly, the Ittan Momen isn't always portrayed as evil. In some tales, it just wants to play. It wraps around people like a scarf, it rides the wind in circles or dances in the air like a ribbon. It might swoop down to startle you, but then it leaves you unharmed. In others, it's seen as territorial, like a weird fabric guardian of a particular place. And if you just so happen to wander into its domain, it lashes out. But if you show it respect or just stay out of its path, it just floats on, harmless like the breeze. Still, the majority of the stories warn the same thing. If you feel something strange pass by at night, no you didn't. Don't stop, don't look, don't follow. The Ittan Momen has glided its way into pop culture over the last century. It appears in yokai encyclopedias, most famously in Shigeru Mizuki's Ge 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 no Kitaro, where it's transformed into a loyal, rideable companion yokai, kind of like a supernatural flying carpet. But the original legends of the Ittan Momen, they were never that friendly. Across all of these stories is a common theme, I think, and it's that care matters. Not just care for people, but for the things that support us, the things that we use daily, the things that we throw away when they no longer serve a purpose. I think in this day and age of consumerism and capitalism, this is a really important message to remember. The Tsukumogami force us to think about what we owe to the objects that carried our weight, caught our tears, sheltered our bodies, or cushioned our sleep. They're not just haunted, but they're haunted by us, by our absence, our silence, our lack of farewell even. Maybe, just maybe, these stories were never really about the objects at all. Maybe they're about the emotional residue that humans leave behind. The unseen labor, especially women's labor, that goes unnoticed until it's gone. The grief that lingers in daily life. The way longing can twist into something strange when ignored. The Tsukumogami don't want to scare us, I don't think. They just want us to remember. to treat even the smallest things with intention, to acknowledge the weight of use, the passage of time, the quiet work that holds us up until it doesn't. And in doing so, maybe they're giving us a second chance, not just to avoid a haunting, but to honor the overlooked. So next time you throw something out, pause. Maybe say thank you, or don't be surprised if one night it comes walking back to you. And that's it for tonight's episode on Japanese folklore. Thank you for slowing down again with me if you're still here. I hope you got some of your project done. If you like this video, please consider the like button or subscribing. Let me know what kinds of things you guys are curious about in the crafty, spooky, history, true crime realm. I know that's quite a number of topics, but I honestly just really like talking about all of those kinds of things. But until next time, light a candle, thank your favorite mug, and maybe throw your sheets in the wash with a little extra care next time. Thank you again. Bye for now.